Okay, I am pretty excited because Yahweh showed me some stuff, some parallels between David and Yeshua in here that I am just excited to share with you guys. So, I do need, though, 11 people willing to read real short parts. That's the one in the middle. Anybody else? Anybody else?
She said she would.
Okay, you guys will be reading out of the middle column. But first, can everybody see this? Do you all like to move over this way so you can see? Or do you just not care if you see it? Okay. First off, I want to start with Absalom. I've always had a hard time with Absalom, you know. Here's a guy who's given everything, and apparently that just wasn't good enough, and he had no respect for his father, apparently. But anyways, I was given a new picture of Absalom, so I'm going to start in 2 Samuel 15, 1 through 8. And then if somebody will just take the next one that is in the middle column there. Okay, so, in the course of time, Absalom provided himself with a chariot and horses and with 50 men to run ahead of him. He would get up early and stand by the side of the road leading to the city gate. Whenever anyone came with a complaint to be placed before the king for decision, Absalom would call out to him, "What town are you from?" He would answer, "Your servant is from one of the tribes of Israel." Absalom would say to him, "Look, your claims are valid and proper, but there's no representative of the king to hear you." And Absalom would add, "If only I were appointed judge in the land, that everyone who has a complaint or case could come to me and I would see that he gets justice." Also, whenever anyone approached him to bow down before him, Absalom would reach out his hand, take hold of him, and kiss him. Absalom behaved in this way toward all the Israelites who came to the king asking for justice, and so he stole the hearts of the men of Israel. At the end of 4 years, Absalom said to the king, "Let me go to Hebron, for I made a vow that I need to fulfill to Yahweh. While your servant was living at Geshur in Aram, I made this vow. If Yahweh takes me back to Jerusalem, I will worship Yahweh in Hebron." Okay. Would you take John 8, please? Go ahead.
John 8:42 through 47.
Yes.
Yeshua said to them, "If Elohim were your father, you would love me, for I came forth from Elohim and am here. For I have not come of myself, but he sent me. Why do you not know what I say? Because you are unable to hear my word. You are of your father, the devil, and the desires of your father you wish to do. He was a murderer from the beginning, and has not stood in the truth, because there is no truth in him. When he speaks the lie, he speaks of his own, for he is a liar, and the father of it. And because I speak the truth, you do not believe me. Who of you proves me wrong concerning sin? And if I speak the truth, why do you not believe me? He who is of Elohim hears the words of Elohim. Therefore you do not hear, because you are not of Elohim."
Okay. Revelation 20.
And I saw an angel coming down out of heaven, having the key to the abyss and holding in his hand a great chain. He seized the dragon, that ancient serpent, who is the devil, or Satan, and bound him for 1,000 years. He threw him into the abyss, and locked and sealed it over him, to keep him from deceiving the nations any more until the 1,000 years were ended. After that, he must be set free for a short time.
So, just as David has an adversary or an enemy, Yeshua has an enemy. We have an enemy as well. And I just so clearly saw Absalom here, just like Satan. What is he doing? What is Absalom doing
He's
at the
trying to
gate?
usurp David's authority.
He's trying to usurp authority.
Okay.
How?
From becoming a king.
Well, and by getting the people to
Deceiving.
accept him as king instead of David.
He's deceiving. Would the king have turned away these people?
No.
The king is supposed to help judge and deal with these things, so they're supposed to be able to come to him. Absalom has told them what?
There's nobody.
There's nobody. This king's not going to take care of your needs, but who will?
But I'm here.
Absalom says, I will. So how does the enemy work the same way in our lives?
Don't worry about it, I'll fix it for you.
Ooh,
Well,
good, Consuelo.
and I'd hate to say this, but he's accessible.
Mm-hmm.
You can see him in 1,000 different things all around you, in your world, you know, whereas sometimes it's not as obvious where and why God is accessible too, to everybody.
Right.
It's not as evident necessarily, unless you're really looking.
Okay, Eddie.
What was the, why did Absalom take this approach? Was there an offense?
I think because didn't they already rape his sister, and David didn't do nothing about it? So he had a chip on his shoulder, he didn't think he was good enough to do anything, he was gonna take over.
I think he thought he knew better how to handle things.
And David.
Plus, he wasn't punished when he murdered his brother.
You're asking, how's that, like, in our lives or whatever, but, basically, he was trying to get, everything was focused on him, and he was trying to take that control and take the power away from the king. And sometimes in our lives, we try to do everything ourselves and try to take power and take control, and we want that recognition, and really we should go to the
Good
king.
point.
Yeah.
Good point.
Could he have also been mad at David to push him that far to kill his brother? He had to take that extreme that David didn't do anything about it.
Well, and that is why he killed him, because David didn't do anything. But
Maybe,
he wasn't punished for his
right.
sin, and so we know how things are. If you're continually walking in sin and you don't stop it or punish it. Yes, Jim.
Just to see if it fits, is there some place where Absalom tried to change set appointed time? Like we know that Satan is supposed to get in the midst of the feasts and stuff like that. Do we ever see him?
Not that we know.
Okay, I'm just wondering if this wasn't something I was seeing. Doesn't he have a gathering on, or a dinner or something? Doesn't he put on?
Oh yeah, he puts on the dinner when he kills his brother.
Okay,
That's one
but that would be
buffet I wouldn't want to be
probably a
invited
big
to.
stretch though to say that in between the appointed time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Next, I'm going to read 15:10 through 12. Then Absalom sent secret messengers throughout the tribes of Israel to say, as soon as you hear the sound of trumpets, then say, Absalom is king in Hebron. 200 men from Jerusalem had accompanied Absalom, and they had been invited as guests and went quite innocently, knowing nothing about the matter. While Absalom was offering sacrifices, he also sent for Ahithophel the Gileadite, David's counselor, to come from Gilo, his hometown. And so the conspiracy gained strength, and Absalom's following kept on increasing. What happened? Y'all are just going to wait till I write it, aren't you?
Betrayal.
Very good. Excellent. Glad you saw that. Okay, would somebody read Matthew 26:47 through 56?
While he was still speaking, Yehuda, one of the 12, came. A large crowd in swords and sticks was with him, who came from the leading priests and elders of the people. The one betraying him had given them a sign, saying, the man whom I kissed, capture him. He immediately approached Yeshua and said, Shalom to you, Rabbi, and kissed him. Yeshua said to him, my friend, for what have you come? They approached, reached out their hands to Yeshua, and captured him. Just then, one of the men who was with Yeshua stretched out his hand and drew out his sword and struck the servant of the high priest, cutting off his ear. Yeshua said to him, return your sword to its sheath, for those who grasp the sword will perish by the sword. Do you say in your heart that I am not able to ask now of my Father, and he would command for me more than 12 legions of angels? But then how would the scriptures be fulfilled that say, "This is how it shall surely be." At that time Yeshua said to the crowd of people, "You have come out like one comes out of a robber, with swords and sticks to capture me. But I had been sitting and teaching in the temple every day, and you did not seize me. But all this was to fulfill the writings of the prophets." Then all the disciples abandoned him and fled.
Thank you. So how are they similar, other than they were betrayed?
Signal.
A signal?
As it wasn't done in public.
Kind of secretive.
Well, they were both betrayed by someone who was close to them at one point in their life.
Right, they were both betrayed by someone close to them. Okay. All right, I'm going to read 15, verse 21. But Ittai replied to the king, "As surely as Yahweh lives, and as my master the king lives, wherever my master the king may be, whether it means life or death, there will your servant be." Would someone read Matthew 26, 31 through 35?
Then said Judas unto them, All of you be offended because of me this night, for it is written, I will smite the shepherd, and the sheep of the flock shall be scattered abroad. But after I am risen again, I will go before you into Galilee. And Peter answered and said unto them, Though all men shall be offended because of thee, yet I will never be offended. Jesus said unto him, Verily I say unto you, that this night before the cock crows, thou shalt deny me thrice. Peter said unto him, Though I shall die with thee, yet I will not deny thee. Likewise also said all the disciples.
Okay, so we have two pledges of loyalty. What's the difference?
One's kept, one's not.
One is kept, one is not. That's right. That's right. What it must have been to follow David. One, there are over 600 men following him. But to leave everything behind in Jerusalem and to say, I'm going to go wherever you are going. Whatever hole you're in, I'm going to be in. Whatever cave, whatever. I'm going to be there with you because you mean that much to me. And yet Peter, all he said was, I won't deny you. He wasn't even pledging to leave everything and to go get into a hole or a cave and hide. And yet, which one do we have the hardest time with? Denying.
Follow.
Many times in our life, we deny him because of the way we've spoken, or the way we've acted or not acted.
Yeah, it's not just a speaking, it's you deny it by your actions. or-
Right.
yeah, right.
Yeah. Okay.
Why is David running?
Because Absalom has formed a coup and is going to kill him and take over.
Why is David not looking to God for a covering?
Why is David not what?
Looking to God for a covering in himself.
Mhm.
I have to think that this might be from God because he told them that these things were going to happen.
He was waiting because he couldn't do anything to his son.
But
That's when they went to get him.
That's a good question, Eddie.
You see his heart being very humble when that guy's throwing rocks at him. Here in
Yeah,
this story, obviously he realizes, look, I messed up, and I'm getting a pretty hard spanking here. And so I'm not even gonna, the guy's throwing rocks at me. I'm gonna let him keep throwing the rocks at me because they might be from the Lord.
Might be. Yeah, he did have a humble heart, Matt.
Yeah, well, David had already been told that he would lose 4 of his sons for his punishment for what he did to Uriah. And, matter of fact, he put the curse on himself.
3 down, 1 to go.
And, so this is the 3rd son that he's going to lose.
Jake?
Is that part of the scattering? Where David's leaving, and then where it talks about Christ, the shepherd. being
Striking the
killed,
shepherd.
And then all the sheep being scattered.
I'm sure there was scattering because there were some who went with David, there were some who went with Absalom, and I'm sure there were some who were just confused. and probably scattered to their homes. It's a good picture.
Another similarity within that one area.
Yeah. That's good. Okay, I'm going to read 16, 1 and 2. And then if somebody will take the Matthew verse next to that. When David had gone a short distance beyond the summit, there was Ziba, the steward of Mephibosheth, waiting to meet him. He had a string of donkeys saddled and loaded with 200 loaves of bread, 100 cakes of raisins, and 100 cakes of figs, and a skin of wine. And the king asked Ziba, "Why have you brought these?" Ziba answered, "The donkeys are for the king's household to ride on, the bread and fruit are for the men to eat, and the wine is to refresh those who become exhausted in the desert."
Now when Jesus was in Bethany, at the home of Simon the leper, a woman came to him with an alabaster vial of very costly perfume, and she poured it upon his head as he reclined at the table. But the disciples were indignant when they saw this, and said, "Why this waste? For this perfume might have been sold for a high price, and the money given to the poor." But Jesus, aware of this, said to them, "Why do you bother the woman? For she has done a good deed to me. For the poor you have with you always, but you do not always have me. For when she poured this perfume upon my body, she did it to prepare me for burial. Truly, I say to you, wherever this gospel is preached in the whole world, what this woman has done shall also be spoken of in memory of her."
And another one that I just now remembered, Joseph of Arimathea and Nicodemus bought spices and poured them on his body after he was buried. So there was hospitality for David and there was hospitality for Yeshua. Anybody want to say anything on that?
Kind of a sacrificial giving too, because the perfume was expensive, and, you know, 200 loaves of bread isn't anything to sneeze at.
No, especially if you tried to make it, right, Whitney?
Yeah, goodness.
That's a good point, honey. Okay, I'm going to read 15, 24 through 29. Zadok was there too, and all the Levites who were with him were carrying the Ark of the Covenant of God. They set down the Ark of God, and Abiathar offered sacrifices until all the people had finished leaving the city. Then the king said to Zadok, "Take the Ark of God back into the city. If I find favor in Yahweh's eyes, he will bring me back and let me see it in his dwelling place again. But if he says, 'I am not pleased with you,' then I am ready. Let him do to me whatever seems good to him." The king also said to Zadok the priest, "Aren't you a seer? Go back to the city in peace with your son Ahimaaz and Jonathan, son of Abiathar. You and Abiathar take your 2 sons with you, and I will wait at the fords in the desert until word comes from you to inform me." So Zadok and Abiathar took the Ark of God back to Jerusalem and stayed there. Somebody please read Matthew 26, 62 through 67. Okay, go ahead. 67.
The high priest arose and said to him, "Will you not answer at all? What are these men testifying against you?" Yeshua kept silent, and the high priest said to him, "I am making you swear by the living God to tell us if you are the Messiah, the Son of God." Yeshua said to him, "You have said it, and I say to you, from now on you will see the Son of Man sitting in the right of the power and coming with the clouds of heaven." And then the high priest tore his clothes and said, "He is a blasphemer. Why should we continue seeking witnesses? Have you not heard his blasphemy? What is your opinion?" And they said, "He is a man of death." They spat in his face and struck him with a fist, and others struck him on the cheek.
Thank you. Okay, so priests were involved in both story. What's the difference?
One is serving the king, one is condemning the king.
Good way of putting it. One recognized the true king and one did not, right? One was rewarded with an eternal line, and one we know wasn't even a true high priest. and later bad things happened. Okay. I'm going to read 15:23.
One thing, you think there's any significance to the fact that the ones that David was talking to were going to act as his agents, because they were actually gonna be spies and bring him the truth of what was happening, if you will, in the world, you know? And so, I mean, I'm kinda looking at that role. Do we have a similar role? I mean, obviously, he's all-knowing, he's omniscient, omnipotent, all that, but is there some element of us as being priests that we are to bring something to him? You know, that's just kind of crossed my eye, I don't know if there is. I'm just wondering if there's some kind of correlation there, being priests, because he's using those priests for that purpose.
Right. Well, that's a good point, Jim.
They're supposed to bring the ark back to where it's supposed to be,
Mhm.
first of all. There, I mean, that's, if you will, that's kind of the excuse or the grounds for them being able to go back. Now, we're bringing the ark back here, where it's supposed to be. But we obviously see that they have another purpose that's not quite as, explicit.
Right. So you're asking if our role, because we are priests
Yeah,
in his
I mean,
kingdom,
yes,
if we don't have some role similar to that.
maybe, the only thing that comes to my mind is, if for no other reason that we're to bring prayers,
Mhm.
maybe, from those that don't know, who we are, if you will, or that we're bringing stuff back to God relating to them. I mean,
That's a good point.
that's the only thing that would make any kind of sense, is that we're supposed to, we're bringing something back to him.
Right.
And if nothing else, it may be those prayers, because obviously David's not there to see and hear what's going on. The analogy breaks down a little bit there, but still, that's the idea, is to bring the prayers for what we've seen back to him, saying, I can see they're hurting, Father, can you minister, or whatever. That's the closest I can come to.
Well, that's
answering
one
that,
way of
yeah.
looking at it, sure.
Yeah,
I think so.
I don't know if there's any other parallels, but.
Yeah. Okay, I'm going to read verse 23. The whole countryside wept aloud as all the people passed by. The king also crossed the Kidron Valley, and all the people moved on toward the desert. Could somebody please read Luke 23:26 through 28?
As the Roman soldiers led Yeshua away, they grabbed hold of a man from Cyrene named Shimon, who was on his way in from the country. They put the execution stake on his back and made him carry it behind Yeshua. Large numbers of people followed, including women crying and wailing over him. Yeshua turned to them and said, Daughters of Jerusalem, don't cry for me. Cry for yourselves, for your children.
Thank you. So what is similar?
People are weeping.
Sure, people are weeping. Both of them are leaving Jerusalem, and as they're leaving Jerusalem, there's weeping. Who's weeping? Is David weeping? Not that we know of. Is Yeshua weeping?
No,
Not that we know of.
seems you have a reason to, though.
But other people are weeping. Okay? What reasons would they have for weeping as David's leaving?
He was a great king, and maybe they thought something bad was going to happen to him
Okay,
after he was gone.
sure. Why else?
War,
Sadness.
With him.
Possible
So
war.
losing God's presence.
Sign of God's removal of favor, his anointed for the people.
Good. Also, there's just this thing that humans have a hard time with, and that's the unknown. Change. You know? Wait a minute, that's our king, and he's leaving Jerusalem. And we're not sure what's going to happen.
Is it a similar picture to, you know, the apostles' denial? When he said, I'm about to leave you. Oh, no, you can't, no, that's not gonna, you can't do that. I mean, obviously, we know they had their own kind of plans in mind, you're supposed to be our king, you're supposed to reign, but they probably had the same idea. No, wait, you're the king, you're supposed to, you can't lead, you're supposed to reign.
Sure.
They're kind of pulling the rug out from under us here, our rug, at least the way we see it,
Mhm.
you know? So, I mean,
Why is David leaving Jerusalem at this time?
He's running for his life,
Right.
which I don't understand how you can do that with 600 men following you. I don't know.
It seemed like he'd done it before, you know.
Yeah.
well, and it goes back to Eddie's point, is like, you know, well, listen, he's been confronted with stuff before and he didn't, well, I mean, although he's not facing an anointed this time, which he ran from Saul for a reason, because he couldn't confront him. Here, he wouldn't be confronting God's chosen, if you will, you know, so.
Well, another thing to think about, and this just hit me, David did not turn around and confront his enemy. Yeshua didn't either.
Right.
Look at 2 Samuel 17.
It was Muhammad when we were younger too.
17:1 or?
17:1. One in
One what?
I can't pronounce the other name. It says-
Ahithophel said to Absalom, I would choose 12,000 men and set out tonight in pursuit of
Yeah.
David.
And this is the good advice.
600. That greatly outnumbers 600.
Oh, definitely.
True,
Unless you got God on your side.
yeah, 300.
Are you gonna run? You better run.
But the point is, he had amassed a tremendous following.
Mhm.
Yeah, Absalom is very successful in his plan,
Absolutely.
in raising himself up as the king.
That's right. Okay,
If you don't mind, right before we move on, right after this, Yeshua sees the women weeping, and then he says, don't wait for me, Jerusalem, wait for yourselves, because soon it will be said, you know, it would have been better if people hadn't been born, basically.
right.
Well, that's the same thing that happens with David, too. You know, I could imagine, well, what happens afterwards is Absalom comes in and, you know, does the nasty up on the roof with his wives, which is another picture for the Antichrist, because he's going to come and defile the set-apart place where intimacy is. So, anyway.
That's good. Good, Gabriel. Thank you. Okay, I'm going to read 16, 5 through 8. If somebody will read Matthew 27, 27 through 31. As King David approached Goram, a man from the same clan as Saul's family came out from there, whose name was Shimei, son of Gera, and he cursed as he came out. He pelted David and all the king's officials with stones, though all the troops and the special guard were on David's right and left. As he cursed, Shimei said, get out, you man of blood, you scoundrel. Yahweh has repaid you for all the blood you shed in the household of Saul, in whose place you have reigned. Yahweh has handed the kingdom over to your son Absalom, and you have come to ruin because you are a man of blood. Somebody have Matthew 27?
Then the soldiers of the governor took Yeshua into the praetorium and gathered the whole garrison around him, and they stripped him and put a scarlet robe on him. And when they had twisted a crown of thorns, they put it on his head, and a reed in his right hand, and they bowed at the knee before him and mocked him, saying, Hail, King of the Jews! Then they spat on him and took the reed and struck him on the head. And when they had mocked him, they took the robe off him and put his own clothes on him and led him away to be crucified.
What's similar?
Mocking and cursing, yeah,
Well, mocking and cursing.
right, and one's justifiable, one's not.
Which one was justifiable?
David's, he admitted himself. He said, no, leave him alone, he's from God.
But
He's,
what the guy is saying, is that justifiable?
you,
Did he shed blood in Saul's family?
no, he never, actually, he never actually did kill any of his
Not at this,
children, not at this point, right.
later on he does
Yeah.
kill some concubines' sons, but he has not done anything